Sure. Thank you.
Tennessee Tech head coach Bobby Weiler, the team coming off a big win at Gardner Webb this past weekend. They are now 2-0, the only team 2-0 so far in association play. They're back in action, non-conference matchup, hosting South Carolina State, a team they went on the road and beat last year. So, Coach, just some thoughts about your team and the game with that. With didn't have any power, and then we'll go from there.
Well, first, thoughts and prayers to everybody in that Western North Carolina area. The devastation we witnessed was heartbreaking. On the ride there, seeing it firsthand, going to the stadium, even what Gardner Webb is dealing with, feel awful for them, their players, team, everybody associated with the university, and then what we witnessed on the way home. So we're doing our best to try to help. We're going to do a food drive at our home game this weekend for everybody listening that can bring something to help the people in Western Carolina. We're going to do our part as a team. So that first, Kyle, was so impactful to the team. And then the performance, very pleased with how we handled all that adversity and how we played. We played well in all three phases. We're able to run the ball, sustain the run, be very explosive on defense, 3 turnovers, number of sacks, and then play really good special teams football. Very, very excited to get a win on the road in this league, which is hard to do.
Before we started, we were talking about just it was an interesting game where you had no power. You compared to middle school football, but just when your team finds out you're going to play the game, though, which is obviously the most important. Like, how do you adapt and get ready to play a game without all maybe the comforts or extras that you're used to?
Yeah, we've embraced a mindset here, Kyle, based on what's going on with our stadium. As you're aware, we've got construction here. There's half a stadium. We practice with cranes and backhoes and noise. So we've embraced this mindset of 53 by 120, which means all that really matters when you get to the football part is the field, the 53 by 120. And we've had to embrace that mentality based on our current situation at home. And we were able to embrace that mentality on the road at Gardner Webb. And that mentality has helped us in so many ways. And I thought the Big South OVC officials did a great job. Those guys communicated. They did the best they could under difficult conditions, and it's so unusual to play without a clock, and then you're playing without. You don't have headsets, you don't have iPads. It reminded me of what it's like to be a middle school football coach, where you're just out there for the love of the game, the love of the players, and you're just coaching ball. And we embrace that 53 by 120 mentality as a program, as much to do with our current situation at home as on the road. And that was very helpful to us, having that mentality in those conditions we played in Saturday.
Your rushing game, you have had maybe a different person sort of step up every game. You have depth and big playability. You've had some big runs the last couple of weeks. Can you maybe talk a little bit more about just what's going right and having so many people in the mix?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Our two league games, Tennessee State, we rushed for 220 yards. And then this past week at Gardner Webb, we rushed for 340 yards. We have very good running backs. It starts with that. You have to have good running backs. And our offensive line is learning how to play together in this day and age of the portal. Some of the players got here in January. Some didn't get till the summer. So that takes some time to create that cohesiveness. Our tight ends, we have very good tight ends, and our receivers have embraced the mentality of blocking. And to be a successful football team, there may be weeks where, for example, our first game, Middle Tennessee, Jordan Potts comes off the bench and goes 27 for 38 for 260 and 3 touchdowns, and we look like we're a passing team. And then this past week, we rushed for 340. So only having played 4 games, Kyle, we're still trying to figure out what our identity is. I do know that in order to be a winning program, you need to be really good at the line of scrimmage and the offensive defensive lines. And we're establishing the ability to run the ball right now, especially with a young quarterback who's still learning.
You also had the National Defensive Player of the Week too. So Gaines, he had 3 sacks for a negative 36 yards and forced a key fumble that led to a touchdown. Talk about that defensive performance as well.
Very impressed with the growth and the development of the defense. When I was hired was fortunate to inherit a defense that was number one in the league last year in 5 different categories. And that front from last year, the majority of those players returned. Majority of the defensive players returned. 3 of our captains, Dan Rickards was first team all conference. Aaron Swafford, a linebacker, was second team, and Tim Kutras, a safety, was first team. So, and then Hudson Tucker, he's not a captain, he's a defensive end, that was second team. So we were fortunate in that 4 all-conference players returned from that defense last year, and a credit to the coaching staff last year. Those guys that had recruited really well. So fortunate to have a number of good players back, and we're starting to really show improvement in terms of the ability to put pressure on the opposing quarterback. That's so critical. Having played quarterback, coached it, been an offensive coordinator, those are the things that really concern you as an offensive coordinator when you see a defensive unit that puts so much pressure on the quarterback. And that's what they've been able to do. Theron Gaines had an exceptional game. He continues to make strides and make progress as a football player, very hardworking, and really epitomizes the mindset and the attitude we're trying to develop as a football team. That mindset where everybody grab a shovel and jump in the ditch. Everybody get involved, everybody do something to help. And that mentality of grab a shovel, jump in the ditch is a mindset where whatever the job is, we'll do it. Whoever needs to pick up the shovel, pick it up and get in the ditch. And Theron's a great example of that.
So you step out of conference play, non-conference games, South Carolina State. What can you tell us about them?
Very impressed with what I've seen. They're currently 2-2. They're 2-1 against FCS opponents. They had an FBS loss at Georgia Southern. They're big. They're physical. They're starting to hit their stride, like so many teams, Kyle. In this day and age of the portal, it's hard to know who anybody is until you get through about a month of play. And you can see that with South Carolina State, very well coached. This is a well-coached football team. They have good scheme in all 3 phases. Certainly a team that's going to be a challenge for us Saturday. I'm just really excited that challenge comes at home, back in front of our fans here at Tennessee Tech University.
You're like the second or third coach to say that about 3 or 4 weeks in today. So what about your team? What have you learned, most importantly, 4 weeks into the season or so far, 4 games in?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that, Kyle. I've learned that we're developing an ability to stay focused on the process of winning. We're starting to understand that starting Sunday after you play a game, it's all about the planning and the preparation, and you need to do that all week. The execution doesn't happen till Saturday. So we're starting to develop that mentality of being focused on the process of winning. That's so important for a team. I mentioned before about that analogy of grab the shovel and jump in the ditch. It may be a dirty job. It may not be a fun job to do in that ditch with a shovel. And that's a mentality we're starting to develop, where a guy may have a big week one week statistically, and the next week he doesn't, but he flashes on special teams. He does something that's so impactful from an effort standpoint, and being able to point those things out on Sunday in a team meeting where everybody gets to see somebody with a shovel in a hand. I've learned that our team is embracing that mentality where it's the 53 by 120. Doesn't matter who, doesn't matter where, we're going to show up, we're going to play, we're going to give great effort. That doesn't mean we're going to win every game, but we're going to compete and play as hard as we can. So through the first month, Kyle, that's what I've been excited about, to see our growth and development in that mentality.
Well, Coach, appreciate your time this morning as always. Best of luck this weekend. We'll talk to you next week.
You got it, Kyle. Good talking to you. Have a great day.